Hey everybody, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. So I'm going to culminate a handful of like really quick reviews, camera gear stuff, and then maybe take a pause for what it is and just kind of give you an update of what's coming outside of this video right now is, comparing stuff like, how does the 50mm Summicron on the Leica M10 compare to something like the 50mm Zeiss Luxia f2, which is like basically, I think the 50mm f2 planar that I like so much from M mount, but how does it compare on a Sony body versus a Leica body? And then also I got my hands on a new unreleased lens from Seven Artisans for Leica M mount. It's the 35mm f2. We'll talk more about that in an upcoming video. Working on taking some shots and getting my thoughts on it before I just hurry up and run a video out there. So you'll see that probably sometime late next week. But today's video, there's a misconception about full frame versus APS-C, and people will say the full frame is better or APS-C is smaller or whatever. And in portraiture, it's not really necessarily true when you compare some of the best lenses that they have. At the 85mm equivalent focal length for full frame versus APS-C. Now, there are exceptions to this. Of course, there are smaller APS-C lenses. There are bigger full frame lenses, all sorts of stuff. But today specifically, I'm talking about the Zeiss Batis 85mm 1.8. Put this right here. Compared to the 56mm 1.2 Fuji lens. And the first thing I want to show you off the bat is that these lenses are essentially the same size, and I can't tell if they're the same weight, but they feel pretty darn close. Let me put this right here for you guys. They're almost the same size. And so off the bat, you don't get a real big advantage there when shooting APS-C with that kind of lens quality and depth of field. The 56 1.2, of course, with the 1.5 crop is about equivalent to 85 1.8. And so I just quickly wanted to say, hey, is it worth it to go with the APS-C camera if you plan on shooting that fast of glass? Why not just go shoot full frame? And the alternative, inversely, of course, is true that if you want to go small, Sony or Canon or Nikon, you probably can't get that small on full frame, and that's where APS-C fits. So I just did a really quick unscientific test, because this is stuff I do anyways myself, and I'm like, might as well make a video out of it. Where I took my son and asked him to stand still, which probably didn't happen, is not true, and took two quick pictures. The 56 at 1.2, and of course the 85 at 1.8, and I just compared them. So I'm going to show you the results right now. I'm going to show you the straight out of camera JPEG. The Sony was at standard profile. I didn't change white balance or anything, and the Fuji was at Pro Via, which is their standard profile. And then I put them through Capture One real quick, the raw file, and I quickly hit just auto edit. So I didn't do too much adjustment there. And I want you to see what your thoughts are on comparing the two. So let's take a look at the pictures, and I'll come back in just a second. Okay, so my initial thoughts, the straight out of camera JPEGs, you'll see that the colors are very different. The Sony seems to be more yellowish and warm. I don't really prefer that as much compared to the Fuji JPEG, but that's all very subjective and editable and not a big deal. The one thing you will notice if you were to crop in real close on the Fuji JPEG is that the simulation has grain built in. And so you can see there's a bit more grain in the background and stuff like that. Also, to be candid, I think my son, because he doesn't stand still, might have taken a step closer to me, so maybe the Fuji is a smidge closer than the Sony. But the thing there is that, especially when you look at the edited photos, again, I say edited because I didn't spend any time on them, is my biggest two findings is that there really isn't a big difference. I mean, both these lenses are incredibly sharp and clean. Both of them have great bokeh, they're smooth. And I would say there's obviously color differences or whatever. The only thing I can kind of see, and you guys probably can't see because of YouTube compression when I look at my screen, which is just below the camera here, that's why I'm looking down, is the Sony maybe is a tad sharper, tad bit more detail, and maybe that's because you had a 33 megapixel sensor versus 26, or maybe it's the full frame versus the APS-C, but for 99.999% of anybody looking at these pictures, they would never notice the difference. Nobody would care. And so I say all this to kind of come to the conclusion of, if you think full frame is better for you long term because of other reasons, maybe you want better depth of field of control, or maybe you think it's better in low light or whatever, or you just, whatever reason, you're not giving up anything when you compare premium portrait lenses versus an APS-C. Conversely to that, if you're like, hey, I really want to go with a small package and I want to keep everything real tight, and so maybe something like the Fuji X-E4 with the 27mm pancake is unmatched by something in full frame, right? If you do that, then just know you can put one of these bigger lenses on your APS-C camera and get similar or maybe the same looking results from a full frame. Now, of course, where you start to separate from this conversation is if you take an 85 1.4, but I would argue in portraiture, do you really want to have just the eyelashes in focus? I mean, even shooting this at 1.8 or that 1.2 sometimes is too shallow. I think when you back up and try and do full body, that makes a big difference. But both these cameras are more than capable. So all that to say, stop arguing with people, full frame versus APS-C. There's benefits to each, but when you're doing this, premium portrait lenses, the sizes are almost identical and the results are very close. So within a margin of error that I wouldn't even want to talk about here because I don't know enough. So that's it. Thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate it. I'll be back, like I said, in the future with some other quick comparisons on some other premium lenses. So I'll see you in the next one. Bye.